Well, hello everybody. Great to be back with you again. Seahawk boy Mike Barra here for a little more Seahawks news and rumors and updates. And we're going to check in on the Seahawks schedule today. It was released yesterday, of course. That was a really big deal. Everybody was very excited to find out. We already knew who they were going to play, just when, where, what the schedule was going to be. And, I was a little bit surprised. I got to be honest. We'll talk about that as we get into it. We'll also talk a little bit more about the possibility of trading DK Metcalf. We'll talk about the Jared Goff extension. We're going to catch up on all things that are going on with the NFL and the Seattle Seahawks coming right up. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Seahawk Boys TV. I'm your host, Seahawk Boy Mike Barra here in Las Vegas, Nevada, formerly of Seattle, Washington, a couple of times back and forth. Glad to be out of that gloomy, miserable place. And yes, I'm going to tell you right now that here at Seahawk Boys TV, we are Team Butker. Team Butker, okay? Not Team Woke. Team Butker. Not to get political. I don't want to be political. I'm political enough on all my other sites and accounts and all that stuff. So probably shouldn't have done that. Too late now. All right, let's talk some football because that's something we can all agree on. Well, gosh, something we can all agree on. Nope. I never agree with the majority of what's out there in Seahawkville, Seahawks Twitter, Seahawk land. I'm not just a contrarian. I'm just the guy who brings a little bit of insight and common sense to the discussion about the Seattle Seahawks. All right, yesterday the NFL released the schedules for all 32 teams, the Seahawks included, and it was a pretty exciting day. Been the most exciting day really since the NFL draft. And here it is, the 2024 Seattle Seahawks regular season schedule, the preseason schedule. Doesn't have anything too interesting on it. No trips to Vegas for me to watch the team. None of that kind of stuff going on. But here is the schedule. It starts week 1 against the Denver Broncos and finishes week 18, whenever that is. I don't know, sometime in 2027. The NFL season, it starts way too late, goes on way too long. We're playing the Super Bowl at the end of February now. It's ridiculous. But finishes up against the Los Angeles Rams on the road. Now, as you look at the schedule, it's pretty favorable. The Seahawks are ranked, I think, about 27th in terms of strength of schedule. In other words, it's presumed to be a very, very easy schedule. And I think the biggest reason for that is we're going to face some rookie quarterbacks at home, and that's going to be a big advantage. All right, here we are, week 1. We're going to start. And let's go through this and just kind of do a win-loss thing on what we think on the schedule. So at this point, we start with week 1 against the Denver Broncos. I don't get this. 2 years ago, we opened against the Denver Broncos when Russell came back, and the Seattle Seahawks fans embarrassed themselves and made asses out of themselves. Hi, Victoria. Hi, Nico. Revenge game week 4 with my Lions. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And it was a disgraceful display by the Seahawks fans. Russell Wilson did not force his way out of Seattle. He wanted to win. John Schneider and Pete Carroll wanted to get rid of him because they didn't like him taking all the credit for the Seahawks winning. And a lot of people claim at this point that they proved their point. Well, Pete's no longer employed in the NFL, and Russell Wilson is. And we'll see how Russell does for the first time in 2 years with a good coach and a good organization. And maybe a really good receiver. We're going to talk about that. Again, we're not going to drop the DK Metcalf trade stuff. We're going to talk about it again. We're going to face it. We're going to deal with reality. But anyway, week 1 against the Broncos, the worst coach team in the NFL. Sean Payton was a disaster last year in Denver. He undermined his quarterback at every turn. Russell still had 26 touchdown passes against only 8 interceptions, a 98.0 passer rating, which is really, really important. And the fact is that he did extremely well given the circumstances. So I didn't watch every game the Broncos played. I saw 2 other touchdown passes that were dropped. I saw 2 more that were taken away on ridiculous calls against the Broncos. I think Russ should have had about 30 touchdowns last year, which is a fairly typical season for him when he's not injured or playing for a guy who doesn't belong in the NFL coaching tree anymore. And I actually don't think Sean Payton does. On top of that, we've got Bo Nix coming for his NFL debut with the Broncos. I like Bo Nix in the draft. My brother Dave loved him. We both thought he was a first round talent. Had he been there at 16 and we would have passed on him, I would have been pissed, really even more pissed than I already am about how bad the Seahawks screwed up their draft and once again failed to get a quarterback. But it's a big ask. That is a big ask. And I think Mike Macdonald is a much better coach than Pete Carroll, and the Seahawks are going to be prepared. And I see that week 1 as a W. It may be a closer game than we think, maybe something like 34-20, because the Broncos have a dearth of talent. They don't have a lot of talent on either side of the ball. They're going to have a hard time competing all season long, and especially in this opening game for Bo Nix. If this game was being played mid-season, I'd say Broncos have a better chance, but it's in Seattle. There will be some enthusiasm for the Mike Macdonald era. And honestly, I think the Seahawks come away with a win. Okay, week 2, they have to go to the New England Patriots. Now, this is going to be really interesting for reasons that are not being discussed. I was team fire Pete Carroll in 2020. I was one of the first people online before Seahawk Boy Mike even existed or the Seahawk Boys TV show even existed. I was telling people that Pete Carroll was the problem and Pete Carroll had to go. And then the organization got behind Pete and John and got rid of Russell Wilson instead, their Hall of Fame franchise quarterback. And the Seahawks did okay for a couple seasons, a couple mediocre, right around 500 seasons with Geno Smith. And everybody, hi, Victoria, bye-bye. And everybody kind of made it out to be like, well, Pete's not that bad. But then finally last year, everybody else, Seahawks retard Nelson, Dan Veens, the field goals, all of the Rob Staten crowd started finally saying, well, Rob was, to be fair, was on it a couple years ago or a year or so ago with me. 2022, I think Rob got on the bandwagon. I was on it in 2020. Pete's the problem. Pete has to go. They finally got rid of Pete. So they are a better coach teams. But one of the things that Pete did, which was an innovation for a West Coast team, and I think is really important, is Pete actually dealt with the time difference. West Coast teams are at a huge disadvantage when they have to travel to an East Coast time zone, an Eastern time zone team, and play at 10 o'clock in the morning. You're asleep. Your body's not awake. I have watched over the years, we watched the Seahawks sleep through 10 a.m. game after 10 a.m. game after 10 a.m. game. Just sleepwalk through them, not really wake up until the second half, play a lot better, sometimes eke out the win, but just struggle against teams they should have boat raced, especially in the Mike Holmgren era. Pete changed that. Pete got smart. Pete did what I always said that they ought to do, which is at least the week of a 10 a.m. game, practice at 10 a.m. or practice at 10 a.m. the whole time. What Pete did is he practiced at 10 a.m. every day. So he got everybody's biorhythms and body clocks tuned into that 10 a.m. start time to be able to play at an elite level at 10 a.m. And by the way, there have been several studies done that have proven that West Coast teams, and there's only 5 teams for which it's a 10 a.m. start, the NFL has refused ever to adjust the schedule. So this is going to be a test. Is Mike Macdonald smart enough, or will John Schneider enforce the 10 a.m. practice time to get the team mentally ready to play at 10 a.m.? Another thing they used to do was they would go out a day early. They'd go out on Friday after their practice, get a couple days to get used to it. That made a difference. Pete Carroll had a very successful record at 10 a.m. on 10 a.m. games. We'll see. But assuming all that is equal, again, you're facing a bad team who had the 3rd pick in the draft with a quarterback who's going to be making his 2nd start in Drake May. They might start Jacoby Brissett. I'm not afraid of Jacoby Brissett anyway. if he does start, but we might be starting against, playing against Drake May, second week, and a coach who's an overt racist. So I see this, Gerard Mayo, I see this as another opportunity for the Seahawks to pick up a win. I may change this later on if I find out, no, we're practicing at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it is we do. I may change this pick, but right now I'm calling this another W. So I start off the season 2-0. Week 3 against the Dolphins back in Seattle. That's a tough one to call because the Dolphins are better. The Dolphins have more talent. They have Tyreek Hill, but we have some really good corners. This is a game where they're going to have to put Devon Witherspoon on Tyreek Hill to try to slow him down. They're just going to have to one-on-one most of the time, follow him around, try to make his life difficult. That's the only way they're going to stop the Dolphins offense. I expect the Seahawks to be a better coach team defensively and a better team defensively, but I don't know if they can really stop the Dolphins or not. Having said that, the Dolphins don't travel well. They're a soft, warm weather team. It'll probably still be very warm in Seattle. It'll be nice 60, 70-degree day in Seattle. So I actually think this is another win. I think that the Seahawks will play a close, tight game, and they'll come out of this with a win, starting out the season 3-0. And everybody's going to be, oh, look, that Barry guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Week 4, Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions. The Seahawks have beaten the Lions the last 2 years in Detroit. And again, people talk about a rotational schedule. The NFL doesn't have a rotational schedule. It's ridiculous. This is the 3rd year in a row we've played the Lions on the road in Detroit. That's ridiculous. Fix your schedule so you just rotate every few years. You play the same teams. Forget about, oh, the 3rd place team from this division has to go against the 2nd place team from that division. It's stupid. It doesn't serve any purpose, and it creates these ridiculous situations. I remember in the Russell Wilson era, good God, we played the Carolina Panthers like 7 times, 6 times in Carolina because of the ridiculous scheduling system. Screw that. Just do a regular rotational schedule. Don't worry about records. Play whoever you're going to play that you haven't played recently. The Lions should be coming here if we're going to play them again, or we should not be playing them again. At any rate, the game is scheduled. Nothing we can do about it. But the difference in those 2 games is the Seahawks won them both. They were both shootouts. The Lions have the newly minted Jared Goff as their quarterback. It's a road game. Gino was able to take advantage of a terrible Lions secondary. They have worked very hard. They brought in a bunch of new players. I think they fixed that. I think this is our first loss. It might be a close game, might be an entertaining game, but we lose to the Lions in week 4. Nico Lockey, that's going to make you happy, happy, happy. Now we're back home against the New York Giants. They suck. It'll be easy to beat them. Drew Lock's got a revenge game going. Good luck, Drew. I don't know. I think that we beat the Giants again. That makes us 4-1, and everybody's super optimistic. Oh, we just got to beat the Giants. So we have, or the 49ers. So we have the 49ers at home. Look, let's face facts. 49ers are a lot better than us. So unless Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy are both out of this game, they're going to come in here and beat us. Now, are we going to be more competitive than we have been the last couple of years? Yes, because on both sides of the line of scrimmage, especially on defense with Mike Macdonald, we're going to be better coached. We're going to have better players. We're going to be getting more out of the players that we have. It's going to be a closer game. The 49ers win. We're 4-2. Now, week 7 at the Atlanta Falcons. Tough game to call. Tough game to call. Who's going to be the quarterback? Are we going to be facing Kirk Cousins? Are we going to be facing Michael Penix? If we're facing Michael Penix in his NFL debut or something, I don't know. We might be able to slip that one out. Is it 10 a.m. in the morning? As far as I know, it's 10 a.m. Is Mike Macdonald, practicing at 10 a.m. in the morning? I don't know. Do we go out early on a Friday? I don't know if these things are going to change or not. If this was a Pete Carroll coach team, I'd say we squeak by with a win. No, 4-3. I think the Falcons beat us in that game, especially if Kirk Cousins is playing. Now we come back for 2 home games against the Buffalo Bills and Los Angeles Rams. We're 4-3 at this point. The Bills come in, they stomp us. We're 4-4. The Los Angeles Rams are better than the Seahawks. They have Matthew Stafford at quarterback. We're 4-5. They win. We go into the bye at 4-5. We still have a chance at a wild card. We come out. We have to face the 49ers. They boat race us in San Francisco. We're now 4-6. Now we're home to the Cardinals. We get back on track. We beat them. Then we go to the New York Jets. If Aaron Rodgers is not injured, the Jets win this game. So now we're We're 5-7. Then I think we can probably beat the Cardinals again. 6-7. Then we're at home against the Packers. They're better than us. Jordan Love beats us. Jordan Love. This is probably the point where we realize Jordan Love. We have to have a quarterback at least as good as Jordan Love if we're going to contend. And we realize Geno Smith is not it. So the Packers win that game. We beat the Vikings on the road. The Bears. It just depends on if Caleb Williams is healthy and how he's coming along. 10 a.m. Loss. Okay, I got 8-9 at best. 9-8 is possible, but again, I don't see that the Seattle Seahawks are a significantly better team than they were last year. They're just going to be better coached, and so I think they end up in the same category: 7-10, 8-9, 9-8. Guys, I'm sorry, that's just how I see the schedule, and I guess I'll post all that stuff out. Nico over there says, Nico, who's a Lions fan, says, I think you're 9-8. Could be, it's going to be 9-8, 8-9. It's just going to depend on, luck. It's going to depend on luck of the draw. It's going to depend on a whole lot of other things. Remember, Pete Carroll was not a great coach, not a great X's and O's guy, but he had luck on his side. How often do you win a game when the pass bounces off the helmet of your safety who's blitzing and it pops into the air and you get an interception and win a game? That's Pete Carroll luck. It remains to be seen if the Seahawks will continue to have that or not. It really does. And, we just don't know. We hope so, but we just don't know. Okay. Sliding on over, please get over to Seahawk Boy Mike Barra over there on Twitter. And follow me over there. Let's get this thing going. I have posted a new poll. I just posted it. Question: which quarterback room would you rather have, the Seattle Seahawks or the Pittsburgh Steelers? So I posted this graphic the other day. The Seahawks quarterback room: Sam Howell and Geno Smith on 2023, 64% completion percentage, 41 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, 85.5 passer rating. Steelers quarterback room: Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, 64% passer rating within a 1 point. 42 touchdowns, only 17 interceptions, 92.1 passer rating. Which quarterback room would you rather have? Please slide on over to Seahawk Boy Mike Barra and take the poll and let me know. Right now, there's 2 votes. It's 1-1. And this is interesting because I put this up here. There's all kinds of quarterback stats, but there's QBR, there's passer rating, there's touchdown interception ratio and all that stuff. I decided on what I think are the most important factors. Yards don't matter. Yards are a fantasy stat. No team has ever won a football game because their quarterback threw for a lot of yards. They do win football games because of touchdowns, interceptions, fumbles, and the touchdown interception ratio is critical. Touchdowns and turnovers decide most football games, and what your quarterback does for you in that department, I think, is really, really critical. So I'm going to call this MBR, or Mike Barra rating. I'm going to include completion percentage, which is important, the touchdowns, the number of touchdowns, the number of interceptions, therefore the touchdown to interception ratio, and the passer rating. And again, I'm not going to talk about QBR. I'm not going to talk about any of this other stuff because it's bullshit. I will say this about passer rating, okay? I have never seen a quarterback have a great game and a bad passer rating, and I've never seen a quarterback have a bad game and a great passer rating. Whatever the formula is, it works. It seems to be accurate. It seems to be a good representation of whether or not a quarterback is good. Okay, other things that happened this week. Jared Goff got a big contract extension. If you slide on over to the Detroit Lions salary cap, they finally have the actual contract in there, which is really interesting. And as you look at it, his cap hit this year was going to be $32 million. They extended him for, 4 more years. They cleared a bunch of cap space. And as you look at Goff's contract, he's age 30, former number 1 overall pick, very talented player, led his team to a bunch of victories last year. And he comes in with some really, really interesting aspects of this contract. There's like $55 million a year is the average, and a lot of people focus on that. Hang on, this will load. A lot of people focus on that. 70 some million of it is guaranteed. And everybody's making a big stink out of this. Oh, Jared Goff's not that good. Well, he's really pretty damn good. And we're going to show that in a minute. But the key thing here is in 2024, they gained like $5 million in cap space because they reduced his cap number to 27.2 million. 27.2 million. His cap is 32.6 million in 2025. And in 2026, it jumps up to 69 and then 54 to 61. But here's the key thing. They can get out of his contract. Sorry, I didn't share that tab. They can get out in the 3rd year with a $5.8 million cap savings. So even though they might have a lot of dead money is mostly already been paid in terms of bonuses and things like that. It's not, you don't actually have to write a check for that. They can save $5.8 million under the cap if Jared Goff falls apart, which I don't think Jared Goff is going to do. So this came out, and then a bunch of other people on Seahawks Twitter, including Seahawks retard Nelson and Dan Veens, and these guys started making these statements like, well, what does this mean for Geno Smith? Excuse me? It doesn't mean anything for Geno Smith, but let's take a look and let's take a listen at what some of these guys are saying about the new Jared Goff.
Just had a couple years ago in 2022, and he takes a deal that is literally less than half of the Jared Goff contract. Literally less than half. So the first thing I want to say in this video, the first thing I'm getting to here is, if you did not believe that Geno Smith gave a discount relative to what he could have gotten when he took that contract a little more than a year ago, look at this, okay? And again, I want to remind people, I've never seen a single person argue that current Jared Goff is a tier 1 quarterback. And honestly, again, I don't see very many people even saying he's on the next tier either.
Okay, I'm going to argue that. Jared Goff is a tier 1 quarterback. If you look at MBR, Mike Barra rating, he is the 8th best quarterback in the league last year. He's improved his game tremendously. He performs under pressure. He wins big games. The Lions lost a chance to go to the Super Bowl because of the coach, not because of Jared Goff's performance. Jared Goff did everything you could conceivably ask him to do to get his team back to his, what would have been his 2nd Super Bowl appearance and pray victory. But Dan Campbell screwed it up. So I will say this. I will say that as far as I'm concerned, Jared Goff is a tier 1 or marginal tier 2 quarterback. He's a top 10 quarterback in this league. Everything says so. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, let's go.
Either at best, he's 3rd tier. Honestly, I think Geno's a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Now, some people might not agree with that, but
did I honestly just hear that? Did I literally just hear that from Seahawks retard Nelson? I'm sorry. I've got to rewind that. I got to rewind that. I got to make that bigger. I got to see. I just can't believe what I just heard. Let's go back.
I think Geno's a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Now,
Okay. This is the level of delusion that exists in Seahawksville. Literally the level of delusion that exists in Seahawksville. Some people think, people who actually have audiences bigger than mine, to be honest, but that's only a matter of time. think that Geno Smith is better than Jared Goff? Are you fucking kidding me? Have you seen either one of these guys play? Have you seen either one of them play in big moments? Well, I'll tell you what, let's do a little comparison. There's some cool programs out there that can do some stat comparisons. And here's a comparison of 2023 Geno Smith. This is from StatHead Football. 2023 Geno Smith and 2023 Jared Goff. These are all their generated stats. I do not generate them. Okay. Games played 17 to 15. Okay. AV. I'm not sure what AV means. I'm not sure what that stat is. But quarterback record. Geno Smith, 8-7 last year. Jared Goff, 12-5, and should have been 13-5 and in the Super Bowl if it wasn't for Dan Campbell. Completion percentage, I think a critical MBR stat, 67.3 to 64.7. Passing yards. Jared Goff, 900, almost 1,000 yards more than Geno Smith, 45.75 to 36.24. Passing yards per attempt, 7.6 for Jared Goff, 7.3 for Geno Smith. Passing yards per game, 269.1 for Jared Goff, 241.6 for Geno Smith. Passing touchdowns, 30 for Jared Goff, only 20 for Geno. Interceptions, this is one where Geno wins. Geno only had 9, Goff had 12. But I will point out that Jared Goff had not only 2 more games, he had more than 100 more pass attempts, actual pass attempts than Geno Smith. So you're going to get a few more interceptions. What's critical is the touchdown to interception ratio. And let's slide over real quick and look at the touchdown interception ratio. Geno's was 4, higher is better in this case. Geno's was 2.22. Jared Goff's was 2.5. So even though he threw the ball more than 100 times more and played more games, he had a lower touchdown to interception ratio than Geno Smith, which I think is actually a really critical stat. So he's better at that. Quarterback rating, 97.9 for Jared Goff. Where the fuck? 97.9 for Jared Goff, 92.1 for Geno Smith. Rushing attempts, Geno ran the ball 5 times more. He ran for a lot more yards. Goff is not a scrambler. He's a pocket passer. Fantasy points don't matter. Geno went to the Pro Bowl. Jared Goff didn't. How does Jared Goff not go to the Pro Bowl when he's better in every way? So let's review this. 12-5 record, 67.3 to 64.7 completion percentage, 4,575 yards to 3,624, 7.6 yards per attempt to 7.3, 269 yards per game to 241 yards per game, 30 touchdowns to 20, 12 interceptions to 9, touchdown interception ratio 2.5 for Goff, 2.22 for Geno. Goff wins that. And quarterback rating 97.9 to 92.1 for Geno Smith. It is beyond irrational. It is beyond irrational to say that Geno Smith is as good as Jared Goff, much less better than Jared Goff. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And the more let me upload something. The more I look at this stuff, the more I hear this kind of stuff from people. I just wonder, what planet are they on? Like, what planet is Seahawks retard Nelson on that he thinks that they even compare? Goff was the first overall pick in the draft. Geno Smith was a second round pick. That shows you what the scouts thought of their relative talents. Goff can make every throw that you would want a quarterback to make, including over the middle. He's got Sam Laporta at tight end, who he added this year, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Geno actually probably has better overall talent to deal with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith-Njigba and Noah Fant. He's probably got better overall talent offensively, and certainly with Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet at running back, he's got the better tools. Yet Goff is superior in every way, shape, and form. And It's beyond me that anybody can even think this about Geno Smith. Now, am I saying Geno Smith is terrible? No, he's mid. If you look at Geno's, let me add this in. If you look at Geno's stats and compare them in some other ways, Geno comes out about middle of the pack. Here, let's get this going. All right. There. Geno, if you look at Mike Barra rating, MBR, okay? Geno's 18th in completion percentage, 17th in touchdowns, 16th in interceptions, 16th in touchdown interception ratio, 17th in passer rating. Total MBR, Mike Barra rating is 17. Now, MBR, I'm kind of joking, so don't make it out to be a big deal. Goff is 7th in completion percentage, 4th in touchdowns, 26th in interceptions, but again, it's only 3 interceptions more with 100 more that's an odd ranking. Touchdown interception ratio, he's 14th, and passer rating, he's 9th. So Goff evaluates around 8th or 8, between 8, the 8th and 9th best quarterback in the league, and Geno is the 17th best quarterback in the league. And that's fine because Geno's better than what, 15 other guys? That's good. What I'm arguing and what I've been saying all along is that may be good, but that's not good enough. That's not good enough to win a Super Bowl. So I left the cap hit part off of the Jared Goff comparison. But we now know we can now go take a look at the relative cap hits. So should the Seahawks, when we're dealing with the question, should the Seahawks go out there and give Geno a contract extension similar to what Jared Goff got? Does he deserve that? Is he in that range? Well, again, when you go look at Jared Goff's contract in 2024, he's got a $27.2 million cap hit. In 2025, it's 32.6. It's only 32.6. He'll be 31. Geno, if you slide over to the Seahawks salary cap, Geno is 34 years old. And right now, his cap hit is 26.4. So actually, he's slightly, they're right about the same cap hit. But Goff is clearly the better player. And if you look at 2025, Geno's cap hit absolutely balloons to $38.5 million. That is more than Jared Goff's $32.6 million. So are you really going to pay an older player the same amount or actually more money in terms of cap space in 2025 to keep Geno Smith around? So first of all, the statement that Geno Smith is better than Jared Goff is ludicrous and idiotic and stupid. I'm not saying Brandon is stupid. Okay, I am. But the bottom line is you can't compare these two players. And paying Geno Smith anywhere close to what Jared Goff is getting in 2025 is insanity. It's absolute insanity. So what is the best path forward for the Seattle Seahawks? Well, this is kind of interesting because as you get into it, and you look at, you look at what's been going on around the league. And we got this really interesting report out. Let me see if I can find it here. We got this really interesting report out this week that Draymond Jones was his agent said, or his coach said, that Draymond Jones was actually working out and losing weight so that he could play edge this year. Okay. This is what actually came out. This is an update. This is a report from Hawks Mania, who I'm learning to like Hawks Mania. At least he's not completely delusional like Seahawks Brandon Nelson. He's being prepared to play edge or outside linebacker this season per his trainer, Jackson Hayes. Now, Draymond Jones has been viewed as a 3 technique inside 34 defensive ends, 6.5 sacks, 45 pressures, 9 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback hits, blah, 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 blah. That was when he was with Denver. But now, because they have Byron Murphy to play the 3 tech, they're talking about using Draymond Jones in other ways. So here's the thing about this that I think people are not getting, which I actually think is really, really interesting. If you go back and look at the Seahawks salary cap, let's go back to 2024 here, and let's look at the Seahawks salary cap. If you look at our cap situation right now, we are $1.3 million under the cap for 2024. That, by the way, is nowhere near enough to sign the rest of our draft picks and to account for free agents or injured reserve and practice squad. It's not enough. So more space has to be created. And if you look at 2025, we're $17.5 million over the cap because we signed a couple of rookies. They added onto the cap, and because we moved some money around with some other players. So what's one of the best ways to get under the cap for 2025 and create more cap space in 2024? Well, if you look at Draymond Jones, if you cut him post 6-1, you would be saving $11.5 million under the cap. That covers everything you need for 2024. In 2025, it doesn't really do you any good. Oh yeah, it does. Let's go back. I did not submit that. In 2025, it takes you down from being 17 million over the cap to only 1 million over the cap. So if you were thinking about cutting costs and getting cap space for this year and for next year, one of the first things you would do is you would go and cut Draymond Jones post 6-1. But the Seahawks aren't doing that. Why aren't they doing that? This is a guy who didn't have a very good year. He's an overpaid free agent. He's not somebody long-term that you're going to build around. He's going to be 29 next year. And you got a bunch of guys now that are over 30 years old. They're going to be over 30 years old, making big money in 2025, including Geno Smith. So if they're not doing that, it should tell you something. And this is the part that Seahawks Brandon Nelson and other guys, Dan Veens, Field Goals, and Hawk Blogger, they don't seem to get because they're not looking ahead. If they're going to keep Draymond Jones and use him as some sort of hybrid 34-43 fourth defensive end, I can see the 3 big guys in the middle, Reed and Murphy and Williams, and then Draymond on the outside, left or right, standing up, attacking, kind of a Leo thing. I can see that happening. I don't see him as an edge. He's 278 pounds. He's 280. That's too big for an edge. But it's some sort of hybrid 34-43 movable part with maybe in nickel situations, maybe Jamal Adams coming back to play nickel linebacker. That's kind of interesting. So what is going on here? Why are they keeping this guy when they should be cutting him? And the answer is, ladies and gentlemen, that none of the rest of the Hawks blogosphere has figured out is they've got something else planned. The question is, what is the other thing that they have planned? Well, I can think of a few things. They're going to restructure or extend a bunch of contracts. Not Tyler Lockett. They already did him. Could they extend and restructure Leonard Williams? No, they just did him. Jaron Reed? Nope. That's not going to create enough space next year. No. What about DK? Now, again, not to keep harping on this, DK Metcalf is your best player. He's the best Seattle Seahawk right now. The best at his position. Maybe Weatherspoon if Weatherspoon has another good year. But he's 27, going to be 28. He's as good as he's ever going to get. He's peaked. We don't really have a quarterback. We don't have a Jared Goff, a top 10 quarterback to consistently push the ball to him. He didn't get enough touches last year. And as a result, DK actually doesn't make enough of an impact as he should be. He's in the next to last year of his deal. He's going to have to get a big raise. And the Lions just gave Amon-Ra St. Brown $30 million a year. DK is going to want what Amon-Ra St. Brown is making, and he probably deserves it because he's just as good, if not a better player than Amon-Ra St. Brown. But if you go back to the Seahawks salary cap and you start to play with it for 2025, what happens if I trade DK Metcalf with a post 6-1 designation or post 6-1? What happens to the Seahawks salary cap? We go from 1.3 million under the cap to 18.343 million under the cap, which saves us all kinds of trouble and money. And we go to 4.56, almost $4.5 million under the cap for 2025. So it's a savings of what? 20 some million dollars. 24 million dollars in 2025. 22 million in 2025. Then what can you do? Well, you've got this 35-year-old quarterback who's not as good as Jared Goff, and he's mid, making 38.5 million against your cap. If you cut him, you suddenly have $30 million to play with. Well, you have this 33-year-old wide receiver who you love and you'd love to have back, but not at a $30.895 million cap hit. So if you cut him, you're suddenly up to $4.56 million. Now you look at the same guy, Draymond Jones, you wait one more year on his deal, and when you cut him, you save $16.510 million. Now you're up to $63 million. And you have a fat, old, 31-year-old overpaid defensive lineman. If you cut him, you save $12.5 million under the cap. And don't talk to me about dead money. Dead money doesn't fucking matter. You don't have to pay it. It's just a bookkeeping thing. The only thing that matters is cap space. So by trading DK after June 1st, and then cutting your 5 older, less productive players in Geno, Lockett, Jones, and Williams, you suddenly have $75.5 million in cap space. And as I pointed out before, assuming you can get a first and a third for DK, and I'm positive you can get a first from the Pittsburgh Steelers because Russ really wants DK back there, I'm sure, to come play with him again, you're looking at $75.5 million in cap space. You're looking at 2 firsts, a second, 2 thirds, because you're going to get a third in the deal, I'm going to assume, 2 fourths, and a fifth. Or if you get a fifth, and anyway, you're looking at 8 picks out of the top 110 or 120 or so. So you have all that cap space and all of that draft capital to go get your quarterback of the future and a couple of defensive linemen to replace Draymond Jones and Leonard Williams. And you can also go out and get a wide receiver in the draft or a wide receiver in the trade market because you have all these picks and you have all this money to spend. So who might be available in free agency if we traded DK? Well, Hunter Renfro's still out there. He's 28. He's got 4 years of experience. He's unrestricted. Michael Thomas is unrestricted. These guys you could bring in on 1-year deals. McCole Hardman, Randall Cobb. You could bring these guys, Marquise Goodwin. You could bring these guys in on 1-year deals as a bridge to going and getting wide receiver or 2 next year. You have plenty of picks to get an elite quarterback. Even if that's Dak, you have the money to sign Dak. If Dak makes it to free agency, which is a possibility in Dallas, you can go get Dak. So again, I'm going to go back to this again. It makes too much sense. And look, if they are not cutting Draymond Jones, there's a reason. It's because they have plans to do something else. And I don't think that restructuring and extending a bunch of 2024 over 30-year-old guys, it's not, there's no room on the roster. Let's go back and look. There, I mean, on the roster, where on the roster do you see guys where you can make more cap space for 2024 and or 2025? DK's the only place. And you're not going to really, you're going to be, you could probably give him a new deal, but you'd be overpaying for an aging player who's already as good as he's going to get. He's not improving. So I have a suspicion. That there is a little more to this whole thing than meets the eye. I feel like there's more to this whole thing than meets the eye. Okay, there is one more thing I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. Which is that a story came out because there's been rumors going around. By the way, the Seahawks have 4 primetime games. I gave the over-under at 3. They went over. I would have taken the under. I'm surprised. But a reporter, a guy named Michael Sean Dugar, who I don't like very much because he's pretty much racist, came out with an interesting story a couple days ago, May 14th, 2 days ago. He said, this echoes what John, meaning John Schneider, recently said, and it suggests 2 things. There's a weird disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff on a massive acquisition. Odd roster construction considering Jordan Brooks was just drafted, KJ and Bobby were under contract for multiple years. And what he's talking about is the debate that went on in the front office over the acquisition of Jamal Adams in, 2021. The front office from the day they traded for him. Many of those people up there, pro personnel and scouting, and general manager John Schneider himself, wanted to see Jamal Adams as a linebacker, not Jamal Adams, the safety, said Brock Heward. The thought was, let's get this guy around the line of scrimmage. Hey, Pete, you love to play guys to guys' unique strengths. Play this guy around the line of scrimmage. Do not put him in too deep. Do not put Edward Scissorhands back there to try and catch the football. Put Edward Scissorhands around the line of scrimmage to cut people's legs off because that's what this guy's good at. And instead, guess what he played? Safety, safety, safety. Now, that is pretty fascinating stuff. And what it means or what it implies is what I was saying all along, which is that Pete Carroll's out of control the last couple of years. Now, the first year, they used Jamal Adams around the line of scrimmage. He attacked the quarterback. He had 9.5 sacks, which was an NFL record in a league that is 100 years old. He set the record for sacks by a defensive back and 11 tackles for loss that season. And then they stopped using him that way. And yeah, he got injured and he missed games. And I'm like, dude, what? Why aren't we using this guy to do? Let's forget about him as a safety. Let's make him a nickel linebacker. Bring him in passing situations and attack the line of scrimmage, or even put him next to Bobby. You got Bobby in the middle. He's pretty good against the run. We'll have Jamal just go attack the football. And the last 3 years, 2 years, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. So it makes complete sense now that you have a new head coach, a defensive-minded head coach with different ideas about how to play defense. It makes a lot of sense that they're now talking to Jamal Adams about the possibility of coming back. Now, there are lots of other teams that need safeties, the Bills among them. I suspect he might sign with the Bills. But if he comes back here, they might actually put him to use the way he should be used, which is near the line of scrimmage and attacking the football. That's what Jamal Adams can do, and he's a star at it. He broke an NFL record, a 105-year-old NFL record, doing that very thing. And only Pete Carroll is like the only guy who would just refuse to use the guy's talents. That's Pete. That's why Pete's gone. That's why we've all had enough of Pete. That's why I had enough of Pete 2 years before anybody else had enough of him. All right, guys, that is pretty much what I have. An update. I think there are some things that bear watching. What happens to DK after June 1st? And whether Jamal Adams gets signed. I don't want to trade DK, but since we don't have a young quarterback that we're bringing along, we didn't take Spencer Rattler in the 4th or the 5th with the 18th, the 124th or the 136th pick. We don't have a young quarterback to develop that he's going to grow with. That's going to need him. So let's start over. Let's get a new quarterback next year, and let's get all those assets. That's $75 million in cap space and those 8 draft picks in the first 5 rounds, and go get ourselves a couple defensive linemen. Here's the other thing too about the defensive linemen. You're like, oh, we can't get rid of Leonard Williams. We can't get rid of Draymond. Yeah, we can. Because remember how everybody wants to build in the trenches. Oh, Brian Numskuller. Oh, you got to build in the trenches and then go get the quarterback. Well, here's the news for you. And I've talked about this in my other videos. The Seahawks have spent a lot of draft picks, 7, 8, 9, in the trenches on defense. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebackers. Edges are linebackers. They're front 7 guys. That's the trenches. They haven't been very good at it. But what if some of these guys like Mike Morris, what if they can play? If they can play, you need Leonard Williams even less. You can use that cap space, $75 million. Imagine going into the 2025 offseason, $75 million in cap space and 8 picks in the first 5 rounds, including 2 firsts. Oh, the Cowboys didn't tag Dak? Okay. Hey, Dak, you want to come up here and be a near MVP in Seattle? Okay. Here he comes. And then we draft him a couple of receivers. Now, I think if this was the plan, as Peter DeVries once said, the plan, they would have drafted a wide receiver or 2 in this draft, and they didn't. But maybe they like some of the guys they have in camp. Maybe they like them. I don't know. I think the Jamal Adams situation and the DK Metcalf situation really do bear watching in the early part of June, because I do think Pittsburgh and Russ are going to make a play for DK. I really do. And the price should be at a minimum a 1st and a 3rd. I'd ask for a 1st and a 3rd and a 5th. A 1st and a 3rd in 2025 and a 5th in 2026. Minimum. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, guys, thanks for being here. Appreciate each and every one of you. There aren't that many, but again, you wanted things to be different. You wanted people to think, you want somebody that thinks outside the box. Well, okay. I just gave you some scenarios that aren't being talked about, and let's see if any of them come true. See you next time.